The kettle started its usual hiss, and the old refrigerator gave that steady hum it's had for years like. The house was clearing its throat and saying, "Morning." I had the radio on low, the same station I've listened to since before my daughter had her driver's license. Nothing dramatic, just my kitchen, my routine, my piece. My name is Catherine, and I'm the kind of woman who notices patterns. I notice when the mail comes 10 minutes later than usual. I notice when the neighbor's porch light stays on too long. I notice when a drawer doesn't glide the way it did yesterday. I notice when the cat doesn't jump up for his breakfast right away. Folks call that being particular. I call it being alive and paying attention. That morning, I was wiping down the counter, habit more than necessity, when my phone lit up on its own. It was sitting face up by the fruit bowl. I hadn't touched it. No ring, no ding, no vibration. Just the screen waking like it had decided to. At first, I figured it was one of those automatic tips the phone likes to throw at you. I leaned in, squinting, and saw plain words across the screen. On screen, connected under it, was a small little symbol, clean like a tiny screen with a line icon. Not enough to explain anything, just enough to make my eyebrows pull together. I waited for the screen to go dark. It didn't. The kettle clicked off. I turned the burner down, and that's when I heard it so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. A soft crackle from the phone's speaker. Not a notification sound. Not a ringtone. More like the beginning of a call when the line opens and nobody's talking yet. I froze with my hand still on the stove knob. My first thought wasn't somebody's spying on me. My first thought was, great. I hit something by accident. I'm going to be the old lady who calls 911 because her thumb slipped. But my thumb hadn't touched a thing. The kitchen was normal. Calendar on the wall. Coupons by the toaster. A little stack of papers I'd been meaning to file because I keep my things tidy. The refrigerator hummed. The radio murmured. Everything where it should be. Except that phone. I picked it up carefully, like it might be warm. The screen still said connected. The crackle came again, and then a faint shuffling sound like fabric moving, like someone shifting in a chair. Like a room that wasn't my room. My eyes went to the doorway on instinct. Like I'd catch somebody standing there. Nobody. Just my hallway, quiet as ever. And the morning light laid across the floor like it belonged there. I did what any sensible person does before they let their mind run wild. I checked the obvious. I tapped the green phone icon. No calls showing. I checked the recent calls list. Nothing. I turned the volume down, then up, then down again, like maybe the phone was just being a phone. The screen still said connected. So I tried the next obvious thing. I flipped on airplane mode because even I know that's the stop everything button. The little airplane popped up at the top. And the word stayed. Connected. That was the first time I felt my stomach drop, not like panic. Not like some horror movie. More like when you realize your purse isn't where you left it. Confusion with a sharp edge. "Hello?" I said, normal voice. The way you answer when you think maybe you dialed someone without. Realizing no one answered. But the phone made that tiny click again, like something on the other end noticed me. I pulled it away from my ear and stared at it. I stared like it might blink back. For a half second, I actually laughed one short little puff of air because the whole thing felt ridiculous. Like, Catherine, get a grip. It's a phone. But that faint shuffling sound came one more time. And it wasn't my imagination. It wasn't my refrigerator. It wasn't the radio. It was coming from the speaker in my hand. I stared at that word on the screen like it was a dare. On screen, connected, my thumb hovered over the red button. I hesitated, just long enough to hear one more whisper of sound like someone breathing, too close to a microphone. Then, I hit the red button like I was hanging up on a call. The screen went dark. The kitchen went right back to normal. Sounds: the refrigerator hum, the radio, the soft tick of the wall clock. And I stood there holding that phone like it wasn't a phone anymore. I didn't feel scared yet. I felt watched. I set the phone down on the counter like it was something I didn't want near my coffee. I poured the hot water, dropped my tea bag in, and tried to act like I hadn't just heard my own house echoing through a device I didn't touch. But I kept glancing over at it. You know how you look at a smoke detector after it chirps once? Like you're waiting for it to do it again just to prove you're not crazy? That was me with that phone. I thought about calling Karen right then. And then I stopped myself. Because what would I even say? Hey, sweetie. My phone said connected, and I heard a little shuffling sound like a ghost in the speaker. No. I could already hear her voice in my head. Mom, it's just the phone. Don't worry. So I did what I've done my whole life when something doesn't make sense. I kept my mouth shut and paid attention. Later that day, I checked the phone's settings the way people tell you to. I poked around like a raccoon in a kitchen cabinet. I didn't understand half of it, and the other half was written in that cheerful tech language. That makes you feel like you're the problem. Still, nothing jumped out as a yes. Here's the button that says, stop listening to me. So I told myself it was probably nothing. Probably. I've always been a routine person. Not because I'm fragile, because routine is how you keep life from turning into a mess. Every morning I get my own mail. I flip through the church bulletin if it comes that day. I circle appointments on the kitchen calendar with a pen, not my finger. I keep my important papers in one place so I'm not tearing up the house later. Muttering under my breath, my life comes in envelopes. So when my daughter, Karen, showed up with a brand new phone, it honestly sounded reasonable. She came in talking before the door fully shut, arms full like she'd brought a whole solution with her. Mom, I got you something, she said. Bright smile. The kind that means she wants me to be grateful before I even know what it is. Behind her was Derek, her husband, quiet, polite, carrying a small bag like he was trying not to take up space. Karen set the phone box on my kitchen table like it was a prize. The way she held it, you'd think she brought me a puppy. It's easier, she said. Big text, emergency button. You don't have to squint at anything. And it's got that simple mode so you're not digging through a bunch of nonsense. I gave her my look. The one that says, I'm not helpless, Karen. I said, my phone works. She laughed, warm, and leaned in to kiss my cheek. I know. But you hear about scams every day now. People calling pretending to be the bank, pretending to be Social Security. And it scares me. And what if you fall? I just want you safer. Peace of mind. Derek nodded once, like this was a sensible business decision. It's just responsible, he said. We worry. He said it the way a guy says oil change. Necessary. Practical, not personal. Karen had already opened the box. She moved quick, not shady quick. More like busy mom quick. The way people do when they think they're helping, and they don't want to make a whole production out of it. She sat beside me, shoulder touching mine, and started tapping through setup screens. Okay, she said. This part is boring. Just tap OK when I hand it to you. I took the phone, and sure enough, there were little boxes and little agreements and little things I couldn't read fast enough before they changed. She'd point, and I'd tap, because she's my daughter, because I raised her, and because when your child stands in your kitchen and says, this is for your safety, you don't want to be the stubborn old bat who makes it into an argument. I remember one particular screen, just a flash of it where it asked something about assist and sharing. Karen's finger was already moving before my eyes finished reading. She said, that's standard. Just tap OK. And there I was, tapping OK like I was signing for a package. At one point, I said something simple. I said, I'll write down the new number and put it with my papers. Karen smiled. Sure. Good idea. Derek looked around my kitchen like he was taking inventory just a glance. Then he said, light and polite. It'll be good to have you set up in case anything ever happens. So we can help fast. I repeated, more to myself than to him. Karen kept it friendly. She kept it loving. She told me about the big letters on the screen. She told me about the emergency button. She told me how I wouldn't have to worry about missing calls. Then she added, like it was no big deal. And if anything weird happens, I can help you from my end. Like if you get stuck. From my end? I didn't love the sound of that. But I also didn't want to make it into a thing. Karen has always been the fixer type. Even when she was 10, she tried to tell me how to mop a floor. So I nodded and said, okay. Derek smiled. Not big. Just a quick little tight smile. It's good, he said. Less stress for you. Karen's eyes flicked toward him and then away. Not guilty. Exactly. More like a tired. Like she was trying to keep everybody happy in the same room. When they left, Karen hugged me tighter than usual and said, text me when you're settled tonight. I smiled and said, I will. That night, I plugged the phone in beside my bed. The charger clicked into place. The little charging symbol popped up. I set it on my nightstand like it belonged there. And I told myself what a lot of mothers tell themselves when their grown kids insist on helping. One less thing to worry about. The next couple days, the phone was mostly annoying, not spooky, just irritating in that modern way. The screen would wake up when I didn't touch it, like it was jumpy. The battery seemed to drain faster than it should. Sometimes I'd pick it up and it would feel warm, like it had been busy doing something while I was living my life. One afternoon, I set it down to fold laundry, and it lit up 3 times in 10 minutes with no message. Just a bright screen, like it wanted attention. I actually said out loud, "What is your problem?" The cat blinked at me like I was the crazy one. I blamed the device. I blamed myself. You're not used to it, I told myself. Phones are finicky. But then something changed that had nothing to do with the phone. My mail. And if you're the kind of person who lives by routine, you know what I mean when I say your mail is a heartbeat. It's a rhythm that tells you the world is still in order. Every month, right around the same time, I get a social security mailer. Sometimes it's just informational. Sometimes it's something I file away. But it comes. It always comes. That week, it did in single quotes T. At first, I didn't get dramatic about it. Mail runs late. Weather happens. The world forgets itself sometimes. But the next day, still nothing. I went out to the mailbox myself, like I always do. I used my key, felt the little resistance in the lock, opened the door, a grocery flyer, a shiny postcard from a real estate company. 2 coupons I didn't ask for. No mailer. I stood there longer than I needed to, staring into the back of that box like the missing envelope might magically appear. And I got that feeling. Not fear. Just off. Like somebody moved a picture frame in your house half an inch and you can't stop seeing it. I brought the mail inside and laid it on the counter. Habit. Same spot every day. Then I went to my little basket where I keep the church bulletin and my receipts and the coupons I actually use. I told myself, Catherine, you're being silly. It'll show up. Still, I checked the mailbox again the next morning. And the next, on the 3rd day. I noticed something else. The mailbox door didn't sit quite right. Not broken. Not obvious. Just like it had been closed in a hurry. Or by someone who didn't do it the way I do it. Now. Could it have been the mail carrier? Sure. Could it have been the wind? Sure. But my hand hovered on that lock a little longer than usual, and I felt that same sharp edge of confusion I'd felt in the kitchen when the phone said connected. That afternoon, a plain white envelope arrived, official looking, stiff paper, a window cut out with my name. I opened it at the kitchen table, the same table where Karen had set up that phone. I slid the letter out and unfolded it. On screen, change confirmation. My eyes went straight to the first line that mattered. It said my mailing address had been updated. Updated. As if I'd called and asked for it. As if I'd gone online and clicked a button. As if I'd decided, all on my own, that I wanted my mail sent somewhere else. I read it twice, then a third time slower, like maybe I'd misunderstood a word, but it was plain as day. It listed the date the change was requested. It listed the date it went into effect. And it didn't just say updated. It listed the new address. Not mine. It was an address I recognized in that sick way you recognize something you wish you didn't. Karen's address. My daughter's house. My hand went limp and the paper slid down onto the table like it weighed 100 pounds. My mouth went dry. I looked up at my kitchen wall like the calendar might tell me what day it was. Like I'd fallen into the wrong month. My first instinct, my honest-to-God first instinct, was to blame myself. Did I sign something without reading it? Did I click something on that phone? Did I tell someone something over the phone and not realize what they were doing? That's the thing people don't understand about getting older. You don't wake up one day and think, I'm helpless. You wake up and think, maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe it's me. I reached for my little notebook, the one I keep next to the phone where I write down numbers and appointments. I flipped pages like I was looking for proof of my own sanity. Nothing. No note. No request. No called the post office. No changed address. I picked up the letter again, closer this time, and I saw the line that made my skin crawl. It said, "We received your request." Your request. My request. Like I'd asked for my own mail to be rerouted away from my own house. I set the letter down and just sat there for a moment, listening to my refrigerator hum like it always does, like the world hadn't changed. Then my phone buzzed. I swear on my life, it buzzed the second my eyes left that paper. I picked it up, and the screen lit up, not with a text, not with a call. Just those plain words again. On screen, connected, the same tiny symbol at the top. I didn't hear shuffling this time. Or maybe I did, and my brain refused to register it. Either way, my hands started to shake, not wildly, not like I was about to faint, just a small tremble. Like my body knew something my mind was still trying to talk itself out of. I hit the red button again. The screen went dark. My heart was thumping. Like I'd climbed stairs too fast. I sat there, staring at the letter, then at the phone, then at the letter again. You know how it feels when two things connect in your head and you don't want them to. Like your brain goes, no, that can't be. I thought about Karen tapping okay for me. I thought about her saying, I can help you from my end. I thought about Derek's voice, responsible, and that quick little tight smile. And then I did something I almost never do. I called my daughter without rehearsing what I was going to say first. Karen answered, cheerful, like always. Hi, Mom. I tried to keep my voice steady. Honey, did you change my mailing address? There was a pause. Not long, just long enough. What? She said, laughing a little like I'd told a joke. No. Why would I do that? I got a letter, I said. A confirmation. It says my address was updated to yours. Another pause. This one had weight. That's weird, she said quickly. That's probably a mistake. You know the post office messes stuff up sometimes. It's not the post office, I said. And I heard my own voice get firmer without me meaning to. It's a confirmation letter. It says it was requested. Karen exhaled, a little sharp. Okay. Don't stress. I'll handle it. I'll call around. It's probably just some mix-up. I can call, I said. It's my mail. Mom, she said, and her tone changed, still sweet. But with that edge people use when they're trying to steer you. Let me do it. You don't need to be on the phone with strangers and get confused. That landed like a slap, soft but stinging. I'm not confused, I said quietly. Of course you're not, she said, too fast, too smooth. I didn't mean it like that. I just mean, it's annoying. I'll take care of it. Behind her, I thought I heard Derek's voice muffled, like he was in the same room. I couldn't make out words, just the sound of him talking. Karen covered the receiver a bit and said something low, then came back brighter. See, we'll fix it. Don't worry. I stared at the letter while she talked. My eyes tracked the printed words like they were moving. Okay, I said, because what else do you say to your child? We hung up, and the kitchen felt smaller. I looked at my mailbox key on the hook by the door. I looked at my little stack of envelopes and papers. The same ones I've managed for years without anyone handling it for me. Then I picked up that change confirmation letter again, and my throat tightened. Because it wasn't just a mistake on paper. It was the feeling underneath it. The feeling that something had moved in my life while my back was turned. I stared at that paper and thought, if I didn't do this, who did? I tried to go back to normal after that letter. That's what you do when you've lived long enough to know panic doesn't fix anything. You make a cup of tea. You wash the dish you left in the sink. You straighten the little pile of mail like a small act of control. You tell yourself you'll handle it in the morning, in daylight, when your thoughts are lined up. So that's what I did. The next day, I was in my kitchen again, same kettle. Same refrigerator hum, same radio low in the background. I was talking to myself while I worked, because I've always done that. Not full conversations, just little running commentary. Okay, Catherine, I said, reading off my notepad. Call the number on the letter. Ask what happened. Fix it. I had the phone on the counter beside the sugar bowl, face up, charging. I wasn't testing it. I wasn't playing detective. I wasn't whispering secret passwords like in a movie. I was literally standing there, talking to myself, as normal as breathing. And the screen lit up. Not a message, not a call, just those same plain words. On screen, connected. My hands stopped moving. It was so simple, just 2 seconds of light, but it felt like someone walked into my kitchen and didn't bother to knock. I didn't pick it up right away. I just stared at it. The refrigerator hummed. The kettle clicked. The radio host laughed at something harmless. Life kept going, and that word sat there like a thumbprint on glass. Connected. I watched it the way you watch a stove burner you're not sure you turned off. You don't want to overreact, but you also don't want to be wrong. I took one slow breath and kept doing what I'd been doing because I wanted to see if it would change on its own. I reached for a mug, set it down, opened the cabinet. The screen stayed lit. The words stayed. Then, faint as the first time, I heard that soft little crackle through the speaker like an open line. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough to raise the hairs on my arms. I didn't say hello this time. I didn't test it. I didn't play games. I just stood there and listened because something in me, some older, wiser part said, don't feed it. Don't perform. Just observe. And I heard it. A tiny shuffle, like fabric. A small tap, like someone set something down in a different room. It wasn't the sound of my kitchen. It was the sound of somewhere else. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like a misstep on stairs. I reached over and hit the red button. Same as before, like I was ending a call I never placed. The screen went dark. I stood there holding my breath, waiting for my heart to settle back into my chest. And then my phone buzzed. Not even a full minute later. A text from Karen. On-screen text. Is your phone acting weird? I stared at that message until the letters blurred a little. Because how would she know to ask that? How would she know right then, right after it happened, unless she was seeing what I was seeing? Unless she was connected to whatever my phone had been connected to. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My fingers felt thick and clumsy, like I was wearing mittens. I set the phone down and pressed my palm flat on the countertop, just to feel something solid. I looked around my kitchen like it could explain itself. The calendar on the wall, the dish towel, the mail basket, everything normal. Except that phone. Except that text. My daughter, asking if my phone was acting weird, like she'd just watched it do something. And that's when it hit me: quiet, clean, and awful. The phone wasn't acting weird. It was doing what it was built to do. Later that week, Karen came by again. Like nothing had happened. She brought a little bag of groceries because she knows I'll accept that without arguing, and she came in talking about traffic and how the price of eggs is ridiculous and how her neighbor's dog won't stop barking. Normal daughter stuff. Familiar. And I wanted so badly for it to stay familiar. We sat at my kitchen table. I made coffee. Derek showed up a few minutes after her, polite like always. He said hello the way a man says hello when he plans to stay in control of the room. Karen picked up my phone like it belonged to her. Not rough, just casual. Like it was a remote to the TV. So, she said, in that bright voice, I was thinking we should set up a few more safety things for you, just to make it easier. I kept my voice light. What kind of things? Karen smiled. Alerts, reminders, stuff like that. Then she asked like it was nothing. Mom, what bank do you use? I'm setting up alerts for you. She said it the same way you'd ask what brand of detergent someone uses. Casual, helpful, no big deal. But my stomach tightened again, because it wasn't a random question. It was a piece of my life. My bank. I repeated, slow. Yeah, she said, nodding. So if there's any weird activity, we'll know right away. You know, scams, fraud, all that. Derek leaned back in his chair, arms folded, like this was sensible adult business. It's smart, he said. A lot of older folks get hit with stuff now. You don't want to wait until it's too late. Older folks. Like I wasn't sitting right there. I kept my face calm. I can set up alerts, I said. Karen waved a hand like she was brushing away a crumb. I know you can. It's just easier if I do it for you. You don't need the hassle. Then she asked another question, still smiling. Where do you keep your important papers? Like your insurance stuff, your social security letters, your bank statements. Just so you don't lose them. Just so you don't lose them. The way she said it was sweet, concerned, like she was picturing me wandering around confused. Papers scattered like leaves, and it made me feel two things at the same time. One, irritated, because I have never lost my important papers. Two, embarrassed, because that's how people talk when they've decided you're declining. I stirred my coffee slowly, buying time. I keep them where I always keep them, I said. In my file box. Karen nodded too quickly. Okay, perfect. And where's that? I looked at her. Really, it looked. This was my daughter. The little girl I used to pick up from school. The teenager I stayed up worrying about. The grown woman who calls me mom like it still means something safe. And here she was, asking me for a map of my life. Derek cut in, smooth as oil. Catherine, we're just trying to protect you. That's what adults do. We take care of things before they become emergencies. Adults. That word hung there in my kitchen like a sign I hadn't agreed to hang. Karen kept smiling, but her eyes were busy. Her eyes were calculating, even if she didn't mean them to be. Like she was sorting information into little piles. And then she said the part that made my blood go cold. You know what might help? She said, I can hold your mail for a few days, just while we straighten this address thing out, so you don't miss anything important. Hold my mail. Like I was a college kid leaving town. Like my mailbox wasn't mine. I set my spoon down gently. Why would I miss it? Karen shrugged, still in that friendly tone. Well, if it's getting mixed up, if it's going to the wrong place, this way I can make sure nothing slips through the cracks. I can just pick it up and bring it to you all at once. Derek nodded. It's efficient, he said. We should do this soon, before anything else changes. Soon. He said it like there was a deadline, like something was moving behind the scenes and he wanted to get ahead of it. I kept my voice even. I'll handle my mail, I said. Karen's smile wobbled for half a second, so small you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. Then it snapped back into place. Okay, she said, too cheerful. Okay, Mom. Of course. But Derek's eyes stayed on me, steady and flat, like he was measuring resistance. The visit ended the way visits usually end. Karen hugged me. Derek said, call if you need anything. They left. My kitchen got quiet again, and I sat there, looking at my mailbox key on the hook by the door. I thought about that connected screen. I thought about Karen's text-perfect timing. I thought about her questions that were shaped like help but felt like inventory. Then I made a decision, and it wasn't dramatic. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just grabbed my purse, grabbed my keys, and wrote one line on my notepad in big letters like I meant it. Find out what's happening. The next morning, I drove to the post office and asked a question I never thought I'd need to ask. The post office was crowded in that familiar way, people holding little slips of paper, tapping their feet, sighing like the government personally offended them. Fluorescent lights, a bulletin board with flyers, a stand of boxes for stamps and forms. I waited my turn, and when I got to the counter, I spoke quietly, because even when you're right, there's something about saying, my mail was changed. That makes you feel like you did something wrong. I got a letter. I told the clerk. It says my address was updated, but I didn't request that. She asked for my ID, asked for my address, tapped a few keys. Her face didn't change, she'd seen everything. But she did pause. HM, she said. That one sound made my stomach tighten. What? I asked. It shows a change request, she said, still looking at her screen. Processed recently. Do you see who requested it? I asked. She didn't answer the way I wanted. She said the kind of thing people say when they can't tell you much. It can be done online, she said, or in person with certain information. Certain information. My name, my address, my phone number. The kind of things you don't think of as dangerous until you realize they're keys. She gave me a form to reverse it. She told me it might take time. She told me to watch for confirmations. I walked out holding that paper like it was proof my instincts weren't crazy. But the thing is, even with that form in my hand, I still had the phone. And I still didn't know what it was doing. That afternoon, instead of going home and guessing, I drove someplace I've trusted since my kids were small. The library. The library has always felt safe to me. Quiet, orderly, people whispering, the same smell of paper and carpet and old books. It's one of the few places left where nobody rushes you for being slow. I walked up to the help desk with my phone in my hand and my heart in my throat. The person behind the desk wasn't some tech wizard in a hoodie. It was a normal-looking young man with kind eyes and a name tag. He smiled like he'd helped 100 people print boarding passes and reset passwords and find any key. "Hi," he said. "How can I help you today?" I swallowed. "My daughter set up my phone," I said, "and now it's doing things I don't understand." He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't talk down to me. He just nodded like that made perfect sense. "Okay," he said gently. "Let's take a look together." We sat at a little table off to the side. He asked if I was comfortable handing him the phone. I watched his hands. Calm, careful, respectful. He didn't start tapping a million things. He didn't go digging like he was trying to show off. He checked a couple simple places. The way you check a door lock before you start accusing the wind. Then he tilted the screen toward me. "Do you see this?" he asked. On screen, a simple setting page showing microphone. Always and location. Always. I stared at it. Always. I repeated. He nodded. That means the phone is allowed to share those. All the time. Not just when you're using an app. Allowed. That word hit different than permission. It sounded like something you'd say about a stranger in your house. I felt my face get warm. But I didn't do that. I said, "I believe you." He said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Then he tapped once more and showed me something else. He didn't use a bunch of technical words. He kept it plain. "It looks like someone else is set up as the main controller for this phone." He said, "The main controller." I repeated, tasting the words. "Yeah," he said, "like, they can manage certain settings from another device." From another device. My throat went tight. So someone could. He held up a hand, gentle, not dramatic. "I'm not saying anyone is doing anything bad," he said carefully. "I'm just saying the phone is set up in a way that allows it. Allows it." He looked at me for a second, like he was deciding how honest to be without scaring me. Then he said it anyway. "What? If that kind of access is turned on," he said, "the phone can share location. And it can share microphone if the feature is active. And it can be controlled remotely." Remotely. That was the word that made everything click into place. The connected screen. The faint sounds. Karen's perfectly timed text. My hands started to shake. Small and steady, like my body was trying to warn me without making a scene. "Can I turn it off?" I asked. "We can change some things," he said. "We can definitely tighten it up." He helped me switch one setting off just once so I could see how it worked. He suggested I change my passwords. He suggested I not accept any help setup unless I was the one doing it. He said it kindly, like he was talking to his own aunt. When I stood up to leave, my phone felt heavier than it had when I walked in. Not because of the weight, because of what it meant. I walked out of that library holding my phone like it wasn't a phone anymore. When I got home from the library, I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't throw the phone in a drawer or wrap it in foil like some kind of spy movie. I did what I've always done when something in my life starts wobbling. I got organized. I set my purse on the chair. I washed my hands. I made myself a cup of tea because my hands were shaking, and tea is what I do when my nerves are trying to run the show. Then I opened the kitchen drawer where I keep my little spiral notebook and my good pen. That notebook has years of my life in it. Doctor's numbers. Church ladies' numbers. The mechanic I trust. The neighbor's granddaughter who helps with the snow sometimes. It's old school, sure, but it's mine. It doesn't sync. It doesn't update. It doesn't share anything unless I hand it to someone. I wrote at the top of a clean page, passwords. And then I started. Not fancy, not perfect, just practical. I reset the email password first, because I've learned through hard lessons and watching other people go through it, that if someone gets into your email, they can get into everything. The phone asked me to type the old password. I did. Then it asked me to make a new one. I chose something I could remember and something nobody else would guess. Not my birthday. Not my cat's name. Not Catherine 123, because I'm not trying to make it easy for the devil. I wrote it down in my notebook and underlined it twice. Then I changed the password to the account that came with the phone. The one Karen set up for me. I didn't know all the words it used accounts, profiles, whatever, but the library helper had shown me where to look. And I followed the steps slowly like I was baking a cake. One line at a time. No skipping. I turned off the one setting he'd helped me find just one, because I didn't want to hit the wrong thing and end up locked out of my own phone. I watched the little switch slide from one side to the other, and something in my chest loosened. It sounds silly, but it felt like my house had exhaled. For the first time in days, I could breathe again. I set the phone down on the table and just sat there for a minute, listening to my kitchen, the refrigerator hum, the wall clock ticking, the normal sounds that make a home feel like a home. I remember thinking, okay, you're not helpless. You're not crazy. You're handling it. Then the phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Hey, just checking in. Everything okay with the phone? I stared at the screen and felt that tightness come right back. Because the timing was too perfect. I didn't answer right away. I waited a few minutes on purpose. I wanted to see what she'd do if I didn't respond immediately, because I've raised children. And I know what checking in looks like, and I know what monitoring looks like. 2 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. A call. I let it ring. I watched it ring out. Then the phone buzzed again. Another text. Mom? I took a slow breath and typed back. Simple and calm. I'm fine. The phone rang again. Immediately, I picked up because I didn't want this happening all day. Karen, I said, keeping my voice steady. I said, I'm fine. Oh, thank God, she said. Too much relief for someone who'd heard from me 2 seconds ago. Your phone's been weird, right? I've been worried. I didn't play games. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth in the plainest words I had. I went to the library, I said. There was a tiny silence, like a skipped beat. The library? She repeated, and her voice did something I hadn't heard in a long time. It trembled, just slightly, like she was trying to keep it even and couldn't. Yes, I said. They helped me look at the settings. I changed my passwords. Karen's breath went sharp on the line. Mom, she said, too quickly. You shouldn't be telling strangers about your phone. Strangers. Like the librarian behind the help desk was some guy in an alley. It's a public library, I said. He was kind. He didn't do anything except show me what was on my own screen. Karen started talking fast, like she could bury the subject under words. I know. I'm not saying he was bad. I'm just saying you don't know people, and phones have private information. And Karen, I said, firm now. It's my phone. Another pause. Then her tone softened, almost pleading. Okay. I just want you safe. Me too. I said. That should have been enough, but it wasn't. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there she was, Karen, on my porch like she'd been in the neighborhood by accident. Derek's car at the curb. Hi, she said with a big smile, holding up a bag like she'd brought me something again. We were nearby. Thought we'd check on you. I didn't invite them in right away. I stood in my doorway for a second longer than polite. Not to be rude, just to remind myself that it's my house. Karen's smile didn't move, but her eyes darted once past me, into my living room, like she was looking for something. The phone. My papers. Any sign of what I'd done. Come on in, I said finally. They sat at my kitchen table like before, but the air felt different. Less warmth, more business. Karen set the bag down and tried to sound light. So, what did the library guy say? I kept it simple. He said some settings were turned on all the time, I said, and he said someone else was set up to control parts of the phone. Derek's face stayed smooth, but his jaw tightened just a touch. Karen laughed one quick little laugh that didn't belong to her. "Oh, Mom," she said, "it's not like that. Those are just safety features." Then why did my phone say connected while I was standing in my kitchen? I asked quietly. Karen blinked. "What do you mean?" "It lit up," I said. "It said connected. And then you texted me right after." Karen's smile stayed on her face like it was glued there, but her eyes didn't match it anymore. Derek leaned forward, calm as a banker. "Catherine," he said, "you're reading too much into this. Technology does weird stuff." I looked at him. "My mail didn't do weird stuff," I said. "My address was changed." Karen jumped in fast. "We told you we'd handle that." "I handled it," I said. "I reversed it." Karen's lips parted slightly, and for a second she looked like a little girl caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Then she recovered. "Mom," she said softly, "why are you doing this to us?" She smiled when she said it, but her eyes didn't match the smile. After that day, the help got heavier. It stopped sounding like love and started sounding like management. Derek called it adult responsibility, like he was teaching me something. Karen called it normal, like the word could make it true. They came over again 2 evenings later, and Derek walked in carrying a folder. Not a grocery bag, a folder. "Okay," he said, setting it on my table like it was no big deal. "We should talk about some paperwork." I didn't touch the folder. "What paperwork?" "Just in case of emergencies," Derek said, flipping it open like he was opening a menu. "If something happens, we can pay bills, handle things, make sure everything stays in order." Karen nodded, too enthusiastic. "It's normal, Mom. Everyone does it. Everyone." That word again. The word people use when they want you to stop questioning. I looked at the papers. I didn't read every line right then because Derek was talking fast, pointing, sliding pages toward me. It wasn't a full legal takeover with stamps and drama. It was a set of forms with blanks, names, authorized, representative, power of attorney written in smaller letters like it wasn't the main point. "Here," Derek said, tapping a spot. "This one just lets us talk to the bank if there's a problem. And this one," Karen added, "just makes sure if you're in the hospital, we can help." They said just like it was a harmless seasoning. Sprinkle it on anything, and it becomes normal. I kept my hands folded in my lap. "Why now?" I asked. Derek didn't hesitate. "Because we should do this soon," he said. "You don't want to wait until there's a crisis. Double quotes soon. Again with the deadline." Karen leaned forward and touched my hand. "Mom," she said, voice soft like honey, "we're not trying to take anything. We're trying to protect you." Protect. That word can be a blanket or a muzzle. Depends who's holding it. I pulled my hand back gently and glanced toward my mail basket. I had started keeping it close, right there on the counter, like a guard dog. And I noticed something small that made my skin prickle. Karen's eyes kept sliding toward it. Not because she wanted to read my church bulletin, because she wanted to control what came into my house. Then Derek said something that made it clear they weren't just preparing, they were building a story. He sighed like a patient man. "Catherine," he said, "we just need to be practical. You've been stressed lately. Confused." Confused. There it was again. The word they liked. Karen nodded, too quickly. "You have been a little overwhelmed," she said, gentle but firm, like she was speaking to a nurse, not her mother. And in that moment, I understood something so clearly it almost made me dizzy. They didn't need to prove I was helpless. They only needed one moment where I looked unsure, One moment where I hesitated over a word. One moment where my hand shook. One moment where I said, "What do you mean?" And they could turn that into, "See? She doesn't understand." That's how control works when it wears a polite face. I didn't sign anything. I didn't throw them out, either. I stayed calm. I asked for time. I said I'd look at it later. I used the same voice I used when my kids were small and wanted candy before dinner. "Not right now," I said. "I'll think about it." Derek smiled like he'd won something anyway. "Good," he said. "We'll come back in a couple days." When they left, Karen paused at my doorway and said, "To Sweet, don't forget, Mom, we're on your side." I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it for a second, just to steady myself. Then I went to my kitchen table, picked up that folder with 2 fingers, and slid it into a drawer, not to keep it safe for them, but to keep it out of my sight so I could think. I slept badly that night. Not because I was afraid of shadows, because I was afraid of paperwork. Because paperwork is how people turn love into control without raising their voice. The next day, I woke up, made my coffee, and looked at my calendar. I circled one thing in red. Bank. The next day, I went to my bank branch, the one I'd used for years. I walked in like I always do, shoulders back, purse tucked under my arm. Face calm even though my stomach felt like it was full of rocks. The lobby smelled like carpet cleaner and faint perfume. The same quiet music playing overhead. People standing in line, chatting softly. Normal life. I approached the counter and asked to speak to someone privately. A woman in a neat blazer came out a few minutes later. Professional, calm face, kind eyes that didn't pity me. "My name is Ms. Rivera," she said. "How can I help you?" I sat down across from her in a little office with a glass window, and for a second I felt embarrassed. Like I was about to accuse my own child of something terrible, and maybe I was wrong. So I started small. I started with the facts. "I'm Catherine," I said. "I've been with this bank a long time, and I'm concerned there may have been attempts to access my account." Ms. Rivera didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She just nodded like she'd heard it before. "Okay," she said. "Tell me what you've noticed." I told her about the address change letter. I told her about my phone being set up by my daughter. I didn't use big words. I didn't make it sound like a thriller. I said, "Things are changing, and I'm not the one changing them." Ms. Rivera asked for my ID. She asked security questions. She turned her screen slightly away, not because she didn't trust me, but because she was careful. She typed, clicked, paused. Then her expression shifted. Not dramatic, just a quiet tightening around the eyes. "Miss Catherine," she said, "I do see some activity here that doesn't look typical." My throat went dry. "What kind of activity?" She spoke in plain language, the way you speak to someone you respect. "There have been attempts to access your account from an unknown device," she said. "Not your usual device." I blinked. "Unknown device," she nodded. "There were attempts to change contact information," she continued. "And it looks like someone tried to add a trusted contact. The phrase made my stomach turn. "There's also a note here about a replacement card request attempt," she said, still calm. "It doesn't look like it completed, but the attempt was made." I gripped the arm of my chair, just to keep myself steady. "Can you tell who tried?" I asked. She shook her head slightly. "I can't tell you a person's name from this," she said, "but I can tell you it wasn't your normal pattern. It wasn't accidental." She looked at me directly then, and her voice stayed professional but firm. "This pattern is not accidental," she said. I sat there for a second, not speaking, because hearing it out loud from someone outside my family made it real in a way. My own suspicions hadn't. Ms. Rivera turned to the printer. The machine hummed. Pages slid out clean, official looking, with dates and notes and little lines of text that made my life look like a logbook. She stacked them neatly and slid them across the desk to me. On screen, a printed alert page, account notes with dates, generic headings like account access alert and contact change attempt. I stared at the papers. I didn't even read every word right away. I just looked at the evidence sitting there in black and white. Then Ms. Rivera said, "We can lock this down today. We can add extra verification. We can place notes on the account. We can stop changes without you present." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes," I said. "Please." We spent the next hour doing things that felt both boring and life-saving. Password resets, new PIN, notes added, restrictions placed. She told me exactly what to do if anyone called pretending to be me. She told me to come to the branch in person if anything felt off. When I finally stood up to leave, she handed me the folder, my folder now, thick with printed proof. I walked out into the sunlight, holding it against my chest like a shield. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel dramatic. I felt tired. And I felt that strange, heavy kind of clarity that comes when the truth finally stops being a feeling and becomes paperwork. I left with a folder of printed pages and the strange feeling that my life had become a case file. I didn't call Karen right away after the bank. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a minute with that folder on the passenger seat like it was a living thing. The sun was bright. People were loading groceries. Life was normal. And my hands were still a little shaky on the steering wheel. It wasn't anger I felt first. It was grief. Because once the bank printed it out, once it was black ink on white paper, I couldn't pretend it was a misunderstanding anymore still. She was my daughter. So I drove home, put the folder in my kitchen drawer, and told myself I was going to talk to her like a mother, not like a prosecutor. That evening I texted her one sentence. "Can you come by tomorrow? Just you. I want to talk." She replied fast. "Okay. What's going on?" I kept it simple. "I need you here." The next day Karen came alone. No Derek. She walked in with her shoulders high, like she'd already braced for a fight. She tried to sound casual to casual. "Hey, Mom," she said, looking around my kitchen like she was checking the temperature of the room. "What's this about?" I poured coffee because my hands needed something to do. I set one mug in front of her and one in front of me. I didn't sit down right away. I stood at the counter and took a breath. "I went to the bank," I said. Karen's face tightened. "Why?" "Because things were changing," I said, "and I wasn't the one changing them." She opened her mouth, then closed it again like she was choosing her words carefully. "Mom," she said, "this again? You're making yourself sick over nothing." I turned and looked at her. Really looked. "Karen," I said, "I have pages. Printed pages. Attempts were made from a device that wasn't mine." Her eyes flicked down to the table, then back up, defensive. "Fast? Okay, but technology flags things wrong all the time. Derek says banks do that." "Derek says," I repeated. Karen set her mug down to hard, coffee sloshing a little. "Why are you acting like we're the enemy?" I sat across from her then, slowly, so she'd see I wasn't turning this into a scene. "I asked you to come alone because I don't want this to be a debate," I said. "I want the truth." Karen laughed once, sharp. Then her face shifted. "The truth is we were trying to help you." "Help me by changing my address?" I asked. Karen's nostrils flared. It was probably some automatic thing. "Help me by turning on settings so my phone could be connected in my kitchen?" I asked, quiet. Karen's eyes flashed. "You don't even know what that means." "I know what it felt like," I said. "And I know you texted me the moment it happened." She leaned forward, hands spread on the table. Because I was worried. You've been on edge. Ever since that letter, you've been careful, I said, still calm. Don't do that. Don't do what? She snapped. Don't try to make me sound confused, I said. Not in my own kitchen. For a second, she looked like she might keep fighting. Then something in her face softened, not with kindness, but with exhaustion, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. She leaned back in her chair and rubbed her forehead with her fingertips. I didn't want it to be like this, she said, quieter. I stayed still. Like what? Karen's mouth opened and closed again. She looked older in that moment, older than I'd seen her in a long time. You don't understand what Derek's dealing with, she said. I didn't pounce on it. I didn't say, ah. I just asked, what is he dealing with? Karen swallowed. Her voice dropped. We're behind on things. Behind? I repeated. She nodded, staring at the table. Bills, she said. Stuff, it's been tight. How tight? I asked. She shook her head like she didn't want to say it out loud. His job, she whispered. He lost it a few months ago. He's been doing some odd work, but it's not enough. And the credit cards, she cut herself off and pressed her lips together, like she'd said too much. My stomach turned, not because of the money, but because of what money does to people. It makes decent folks do ugly things and then call them necessary. I kept my voice soft. Karen, if you needed help, you could have asked. Her eyes filled a little, and she blinked fast like she refused to cry in front of me. It's not that simple, she said. He's proud and stressed, and he kept saying we had to be proactive, that we can't just wait. Proactive. So that was the word in their house. I watched her hands. She kept twisting her ring like she was trying to unscrew it. Did Derek tell you to change my address? I asked. Karen's head snapped up. No, she said too fast. Then she softened it, like she realized how it sounded. I mean, he didn't tell me like that. He kept talking about making sure nothing gets missed. Making sure everything is handled. Handled by who? I asked. Karen looked away. By us, she said. There it was. The truth, small and plain. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Karen, listen to me. I am not a plan. I am not an account. I'm your mother. Her face crumpled for half a second, and I thought just for a heartbeat that she might finally say, I'm sorry, that she might finally tell me everything. Then the front door opened. Derek walked in like he owned the air. Hey, he said pleasantly, like he hadn't just stepped into a private conversation. Hope I'm not interrupting. Karen's whole body tensed. Her eyes flicked to him, quick, like a child checking the mood of a parent. We were just talking, she said. Derek smiled, calm and polite. About what? I held his gaze. About my bank, I said, and my phone. He didn't flinch. He walked to the kitchen like this was his house too, and set his keys down on my counter. Catherine, he said gently, you're spiraling a bit. Karen told me you've been really worried. And when you worry, you start connecting things that aren't connected. Karen's jaw clenched. She didn't look at me. Don't do that, I said, voice still even. Do what? Derek asked, still smiling. Don't talk about me like I'm not here, I said. And don't use that tone. Derek lifted his hands slightly, like he was calming a child. No one's trying to upset you, he said. We're just trying to protect you. That's it. Protect. Always protect. He glanced at Karen. Right. Karen nodded, but her nod looked heavy. Derek turned back to me. You've been forgetful lately, he said, casual as you please. You misplace things. You get overwhelmed. That's normal. But it's why we wanted the paperwork in place. Forgetful. There it was again, him laying the groundwork like concrete. I looked at Karen. Is that what you've been telling him? I asked. That I'm forgetful? Karen's eyes filled again, and her voice came out then. Mom, I didn't raise mine. Karen, I said, look at me. Am I confused right now? She hesitated, not because she didn't know, because she knew what Derek wanted. And that tiny hesitation told me everything I needed to know. They didn't need to prove I was helpless. They only needed one moment where I looked unsure. I stood up slowly, and I could feel my heart beating in my throat, but my voice stayed steady. Okay, I said, we're done talking for today. Derek's smile tightened. Catherine, you don't have to. Yes, I said, cutting him off. I do. Karen stood too, like she didn't know whether to follow me or follow him. Derek reached for the folder he'd brought last time like it was still on the table, like he still expected me to sign. When he realized it wasn't there, his eyes narrowed just a fraction. You should rest, he said, still calm. You're working yourself up. I walked them to the door. Karen lingered on the porch, eyes searching mine. Mom, she whispered, please don't do anything drastic. I looked at her and felt my heart crack in a quiet place. Karen, I said, I'm not the one doing drastic things. They left. I shut the door, locked it, and stood with my back against it for a long moment. The house was quiet. My kitchen smelled like coffee. The refrigerator hummed like nothing had happened. And then I did something I never imagined I'd do because of my own child. That night, I called a lawyer, not to punish my daughter, but to protect my name. The next morning, I went to an office in a small building near downtown, the kind with beige walls, and a little bowl of peppermints on the front desk. It wasn't fancy. It didn't feel like television. It felt like paperwork and chairs that have seen a lot of anxious people. A man in his 50s came out and shook my hand. Mr. Collins, he said, come on back. His office had framed certificates on the wall and stacks of files on the shelves. He didn't try to charm me. He didn't try to scare me. He just sat down, opened a legal pad, and said, tell me from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the phone, the connected screen, the mail address change, the library, the bank printouts, the folder of forms. Derek's calm voice calling me confused. Collins listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once and said the first thing I needed to hear. You're not powerless, he said. You're just being pushed. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. He didn't say, this is criminal or we're going to get them. He kept it boring, almost comforting in how boring it was. Here's what's happening, he said, tapping his pen on the pad. They're positioning themselves. That paperwork power of attorney, authorizations, those things don't automatically take over your life. But people use them to steer decisions, to make it easier for them to act for you. He looked at me over his glasses. And intercepting mail, changing addresses, pressuring you to sign quickly, that's consistent with trying to gain control without a loud fight. I swallowed. Can they do it? They can try, he said. That's the key word. Try. He leaned back. They can try to steer decisions, intercept mail, pressure signatures. They can try to build a narrative that you're confused. And if you ever look uncertain in the wrong place, they'll use it. There was that line again, the one I'd already felt in my bones. He nodded like he could see it on my face. But here's what we do, he said. We document. We slow it down. We make it visible. Double quotes visible. That word felt like light. He asked, do you trust your bank branch? Yes, I said immediately. A woman named Ms. Rivera. She took me seriously. Good, he said. Then we do something simple and controlled. No drama. No traps. We request a meeting at the bank with a fraud specialist present. We sit down, we lay out facts, and we make clear that no one has authority over you except you. I blinked. You mean, like a meeting with Karen and Derek? He nodded. Exactly. Not at your house. Not in a place where they can manage the conversation. At the bank, on record, with professionals. My stomach tightened. Karen won't like that. Double quotes. Mr. Collins's voice stayed steady. Catherine, this isn't about what they like. This is about your name, your money, your autonomy. Autonomy. A big word, but it landed right. He slid his legal pad toward me with a simple plan written in plain handwriting. Steps, dates, what to bring, what to say. It was boring, and it was a relief. When I left his office, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. I called Ms. Rivera from the parking lot and asked for an appointment. She didn't sound surprised. She just said, "We can do that." Then Mr. Collins's office sent the invitation. We invited Karen to the bank. We told her it was to straighten things out. Karen agreed faster than I expected. Good, she said on the phone, voice bright. Finally, let's clear this up. Derek didn't get on the phone. Karen said, he'll come too. Of course he would. The day of the meeting, I wore my good sweater and the simple necklace my mother left me, not because jewelry fixes anything, but because I wanted to feel like myself walking in there. Not a frightened old woman. Not a confused patient. Myself. Collins met me in the lobby. He nodded and said quietly, "We keep it calm. We keep it factual." Ms. Rivera greeted us and led us into a small conference room behind the desks. There was a table, a couple chairs, a pitcher of water, a window with blinds half open. It felt like a place where people solve problems. Karen arrived first, smiling big, carrying her purse like she was coming to do a favor. "Hi, Mom," she said, leaning in for a hug. I hugged her back because I'm not made of stone, but my arms stayed stiff. She looked at Mr. Collins and blinked. "Who's this?" "My attorney," I said. Her smile flickered. "Attorney. Mom, come on." Before she could finish, Derek walked in calm, confident, dressed like he was going to an interview. He shook hands with Ms. Rivera like they were old friends. "Thanks for meeting with us," he said smoothly. "We're just here to help Catherine." Help again. We sat. Karen next to Derek. Me next to Mr. Collins. Ms. Rivera at the head of the table with a folder. She didn't start with feelings. She started with facts. "Thank you all for coming," Ms. Rivera said. "Catherine requested this meeting due to concerns about unauthorized activity." Karen leaned forward immediately. "We were protecting her," she said. "She's been getting so many scam calls. We just wanted alerts and safeguards." Derek nodded, calm as a metronome. "Exactly. It's safer if we handle it." There it was. Safer if we handle it. Collins didn't pounce. He just asked gently, "When you say handle it, what exactly do you mean?" Derek smiled like the question was obvious. "We already set it up on the phone," he said. "It's just an assist mode, so we can help her." Karen jumped in fast, like she was trying to keep the tone warm. She agreed. "Mom, you tapped okay. You wanted it." I didn't argue. I didn't get loud. I simply opened my folder and slid the bank printouts toward Ms. Rivera, who already had her own set. Ms. Rivera nodded and began laying it out slowly and clearly, like she was reading a recipe. "On this date," she said, pointing, "there was an attempted access from a device not associated with Catherine's usual login behavior." Derek's face didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "On this date," she continued, "there was an attempt to change contact information." Karen's smile started to strain. "On this date," Ms. Rivera said, "there was an attempt to add a trusted contact." Karen blinked hard. Trusted contact is normal, she said quickly. It's for safety. Ms. Rivera stayed calm. It can be, she said. But when it happens alongside multiple other changes and access attempts, it indicates a coordinated pattern. Derek let out a tiny laugh, like disbelief. Coordinated pattern? That's dramatic. Ms. Rivera's voice stayed level. This pattern is not accidental, she said, the same way she'd told me before. Silence stretched. Not long, but heavy. Dotmer. Collins spoke then, still gentle. We're not here to debate whether safety features exist, he said. We're here to understand why Catherine's autonomy was compromised. Karen looked like she was going to cry and be angry at the same time. No one compromised anything, she said. We love her. Mr. Collins nodded like he believed she loved me. Then he asked the question that changed the room. Why did you need her microphone on at home? He asked. It was so simple. So plain. And it landed like a stone dropped into water. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted to Derek, then back to the table. Her face went pale in a way that had nothing to do with the lights. Derek's smile stayed in place for half a second too long, and then it faltered. He started. Then stopped. Karen whispered, barely audible. Derek. Ms. Rivera didn't raise her voice. She just looked from one to the other, waiting. The silence told the truth better than a speech. I felt my throat tighten, but my voice came out steady, because I'd practiced it in my head 100 times on the drive over. I looked at Karen, not Derek. You weren't protecting me, I said. You were replacing me. Karen's eyes filled instantly. Her shoulders dropped like she'd been holding herself up with lies. Derek's face hardened. This is ridiculous, he said, the calm slipping. She's overreacting. Mr. Collins didn't take the bait. He simply turned to Ms. Rivera. At this point, he said, we're requesting the bank lock down Catherine's accounts fully. Remove any attempted contacts or access and file a fraud report. Ms. Rivera nodded. We can do that, she said. Today, Karen looked at me like she'd been punched. Mom, please. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just sat there feeling like my insides had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Ms. Rivera continued. Practical. We'll place notes on the account. We'll add enhanced verification. No changes without Catherine present. And if any further attempts occur, it will be documented and escalated. Derek's jaw clenched. So what? You're accusing me of a crime. Ms. Rivera's voice stayed professional. I'm stating that unauthorized attempts occurred, she said, and that we're preventing them going forward. Mr. Collins added calmly, and if there are further attempts or threats, we will advise Catherine on next steps, including law enforcement, if necessary. That was the only time police entered the room, and it was said like a fact, not a threat. Derek pushed his chair back slightly, anger simmering under his controlled face. Karen reached for his arm, whispering, stop. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. And in his eyes I saw cold calculation, like I'd ruined a plan. Karen's face had changed completely now. Not villain. Not mastermind. Just a tired woman who'd crossed lines and realized too late what it cost. The meeting ended quietly. No shouting. No handcuffs. Just paperwork, notes, locks, and a professional woman doing her job. Karen stood by the door when it was over, eyes red. Mom, she said, voice small. I didn't want it to be like this. I nodded once, because I couldn't trust my voice. Derek walked out. Without saying goodbye, Collins asked if I was okay. Ms. Rivera handed me a fresh set of printouts and a card with a direct number. If anything changes, she said, you call me. I walked out of that bank into the daylight feeling like a person who'd survived something quiet and personal. I didn't feel victorious. I felt older. When I got home from the bank, I didn't slam anything. I didn't fall apart. I didn't sit in the dark with my head in my hands like you see on TV. I did something quieter. I took off my shoes at the door, the way I always do. And I stood in my kitchen for a long moment like I was trying to remember what normal felt like. The refrigerator hummed. The wall clock ticked. The kettle sat on the stove, waiting for me to decide what kind of day this was going to be. Those sounds were the same as yesterday, but I wasn't. I opened my kitchen drawer and pulled out the folder Ms. Rivera had given me, then slid it back in. I wasn't hiding it. I just didn't want to stare at it anymore. I didn't want my life to become a stack of pages. I wanted my life to go back to being mine. The first thing I did was go straight to my mailbox. I didn't check it like a nervous person. I checked it like an owner.key in. Turn, open. The metal door gave that familiar little creak. And I swear, I could have cried over something so small. Inside was a handful of envelopes, real ones, with my name, my address, my life coming home where it belonged. One of them was a confirmation that my address had been corrected. Another was just a store flyer. And I loved that flyer like it was a love letter, because it meant the system had stopped drifting away from me. I brought the mail inside and set it on the counter in my usual spot. Then I did the next thing that mattered. I dealt with the phone. Not the phone Karen gave me. Not the phone that kept lighting up like it had a mind of its own. A clean phone. The next morning, I went back to the library because if there's one thing I learned, it's that help isn't the enemy. Control is. And the library help desk wasn't trying to run my life. They were trying to give it back to me. The same young man was there. He didn't act surprised when he saw me. He just said, "Hi, Catherine," like I belonged there. "I want to start over," I told him. He nodded. "Okay. We can do that." We didn't do anything fancy. We didn't turn it into a big project. He helped me wipe the old setup clean and set things up the way I wanted, slowly, one screen at a time, with me reading each step out loud. When it asked who the main controller was, it was me. When it asked what to allow, I chose. When it asked if I wanted the microphone and location always, I said, absolutely not. And I felt a strange satisfaction pressing that choice with my own finger. He didn't touch my passwords. He didn't hold the phone while I typed. He turned his head politely and said, "I'll look away while you do that." That's the difference between help and control. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open and wrote down what I needed to write down, just like I've always done. I didn't feel like an old lady struggling with technology. I felt like a grown woman learning a new tool. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I put my phone on the charger and slept without that tight listening feeling in my chest. Karen called 2 days later. I watched her name glow on the screen and felt a wave of something I didn't expect. Sadness first, not anger, because I miss my daughter the way she used to be. Or maybe I missed the way I used to feel around her. I answered anyway. "Hi, Karen." Her voice sounded small. "Hi, Mom." We sat in silence for a second, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. Normal human breathing, not a monitored speaker crackle. Just a daughter and her mother with a mess between them. "I'm sorry," she said. I didn't say. "It's okay," because it wasn't okay. So I just said, "Tell me the truth." Karen swallowed. I could hear it. "Derek pushed it," she said. "He kept saying we had to fix things fast. He kept saying you'd be fine with it if it was framed as safety." And her voice cracked, and she hated that it cracked. I let him. I let it happen. My throat tightened. "Did you know my address was changed to yours?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, quietly, yes, that word landed heavy. And the phone? I asked. Karen didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was tired. He said it was just a way to make sure you were okay, she said. He said it was like checking on you. And then it got out of hand. Out of hand. Like it happened to her, not by her. I let the silence sit there, because sometimes silence is the only honest thing left. Finally, I said, Karen, listen to me. I love you. That doesn't change overnight. But you crossed a line you can't pretend you didn't see. I know, she whispered. I am setting boundaries, I said. Not to punish you, to protect myself. Karen sniffed. What kind of boundaries? I spoke slowly, so there would be no confusion. Not mine, not hers. You don't set up my phone, I said. You don't touch my mail. You don't handle my accounts. You don't bring paperwork into my home again and call it normal. And Derek is not welcome here. Karen made a small sound like she wanted to argue. Then she didn't. He's mad, she said softly, like she was confessing something. That's his business, I said. She whispered. I don't know what I'm going to do. That broke my heart in a different way, because I wanted to scoop her up like she was 8 years old and tell her I'd fix everything. But she wasn't 8. And fixing her life by letting her control mine wasn't love. So I said the only true thing I had left. You're going to do what you should have done from the beginning, I said. You're going to be honest. Karen cried quietly on the phone. Not dramatic, just real. The kind of crying that happens when someone realizes they can't undo what they did. When we hung up, I didn't feel relief. Not the kind you get when a problem disappears. I felt something older and steadier. Clarity. A few weeks passed. My address stayed mine. My bank stayed locked down the way it should. The mail came in its normal rhythm again, envelopes arriving like little proof that I still belonged to myself. And in the mornings, I stood in my kitchen and listened to the ordinary sounds again. Kettle hiss, refrigerator hum, the tick of my clock, the radio low. Those sounds didn't feel haunted anymore. They felt like home. Here's what I tell anyone my age who asks me about it, because people do ask. Once they hear a story like mine, never accept a phone someone else set up. Keep your own mail access. And if anything changes at your bank, anything at all, don't argue about it on the phone. Go to the branch. Sit across from a real person. Make it visible. I didn't lose my mind. I found the truth.